You're listening to the Culture Junkie podcast, where we go beyond the surface of pop culture.
I'm Keith.
And I'm Xandra. Together, we dive into the craft process and passion that drive today's creators. This is the Culture Junkie podcast. Life moves fast and your insurance should too. With on-the-fly insurance, you can compare rates, customize your coverage, and get a quote in minutes. It's 100% online, 100% secure, and 100% Canadian. So whether you're on the go or planning ahead, protect what matters most with ease. Head to ontheflyinsurance.com and get protection made easy. Built for life on the fly. Links in the bio or in the show notes below.
Hey, welcome to today's Culture Junkie podcast. Today's guest is someone who's lived at the intersection of elite performance, business strategy, and storytelling. Kent Steffes is best known as Olympic gold medalist in beach volleyball at the 1996 Atlanta Olympics, but his story goes far beyond that, far beyond the sand as we speak. After dominating the sport during its formative professional years, Kent transitioned into the world of business and finance, bringing the same competitive mindset to investing and entrepreneurship. More recently, he's emerged as a thoughtful voice on the evolution of sports, particularly through his writing on volleyball, athlete branding, and commercialization of emerging sports. From pioneering the professional era of beach volleyball to analyzing how sports grow, scale, and capture attention in today's fragmented media landscape, Kent offers a rare perspective that blends firsthand experience with sharp strategic insight. I know Kent through the probably 60 people that we share in common.
Yeah.
He played in 1996, where some of my good friends, John Child and Marquise, were the fortunate with. So the bronze medal in that, I don't know, that was like the seminal beach volleyball Olympics, as I recall. I'm excited to dive into his journey, his ideas, and see what's next for volleyball and the broader sports ecosystem. Kent, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it's nice to have. I'm glad you can make time for us. So I want to start about your early career and your legacy. You were part of the beach volleyball's rise into the mainstream. What was it, the early era like before, and leading up to the Olympics?
Well, so when I first started on the professional beach volleyball tour in the United States, that's pretty much where the only place it played. It started in Southern California and sort of began to grow throughout the United States. It was sort of considered a little bit more of a beer commercial, a alcohol marketing kind of thing. And somewhere around 1988, when the AVP, the Association of Volleyball Professionals, took over the sport, we began to make it more professional, and it began to explode. It exploded in popularity. It exploded in interest. It exploded in the number of sponsorships. Our audiences exploded. The International Olympic Committee noticed, and they said, this is a perfect sport to have in the Olympics. It's only two people, 2 men or 2 women. All you need is a pair of shorts and a net. It's not an expensive sport to play. It's one that they could then take to the world. And they decided, I think in 1992, around that time, or 93, they decided that they were going to put in the Olympics for the 1996 games. And so I and my partner, Coach Karai, qualified and won the gold medal at the first Olympic beach volleyball event in Atlanta. And ever since then, it's one of the most popular Olympic sports. A lot of people can't wait to watch it every 4 years. So I got this. Sadly, the sport kind of has grown away from California and away from the United States across the world now. So it's not as big in the United States as when I played in the professional era back in the late 80s, basically 90s.
So, I'm not sure what exactly you think caused the explosion, because I know it was difficult to professionalize at the time. What do you think led to that?
Well, I think what led to it is the sport captured perfectly the concept of the California lifestyle. Okay. What is California? It's a little bit laid back. It's easygoing. It's sunny all the time. You're outside. It had a little bit of that beach blanket bingo kind of thing, like Gidget
Sure.
kind of situation where everybody's hanging out at the beach. They're having fun. They're dancing. And our sport sort of captured that. And we then took that kind of vibe, around the country and ultimately into the world. So if you came to a beach volleyball tournament, you were coming to the beach, watching a sporting event, listening to some music, jump in the water, bring your sandwich, sit in the sand, meet your friends, go out that night and, get some dinner, go to the bar, go to the club, and then come back to the next day and watch the finals. So it was kind of like a beach party weekend. So
Right.
The surprise isn't why was it so popular. The surprise was, why. Of course, it's popular. You can just tell. It's when you get those things right. You're inviting people down to a beach environment. It's not necessarily like a crazy party environment, but a fun weekend vacation environment. You're going to be successful. And then what we did is we took that vibe, that scene, and we packaged up a television production and put it on TV, and people were interested in watching us travel around the country to these great beaches and also other cities and bring this flavor, this vibe, this fun. They would record it and videotape it, and everyone watching it, like you said, you're in Toronto up there where it's 2 degrees or 35 degrees and it's 80 degrees. In California today, I could be down on the beach getting a suntan. It's that nice down here. So everywhere you go, you could see these, good-looking guys playing beach volleyball, these great crowds and the great music and the great fun and the dancing and all that.
Well, listen, you were successful, prior to the Olympics. You were winning tournaments with Karch. I mean, you guys were the number one in the world as far as I can remember. Was the Olympic gold medal pivotal to your career, or was it just another stop in the road?
Well, when I first started playing beach volleyball, it wasn't really even a professional sport. Then it became super professional, and it wasn't even in the Olympics. So that was never a thought in your mind. Indoor volleyball is the Olympic discipline. That's the Olympic sport. So if you wanted to get an Olympic gold medal, that was it. And then eventually in 1993, they said, hey, we're going to put it in the Olympics. And that's the first time you ever thought that was a goal you wanted to achieve. Prior to that, you wanted to win the Manhattan Beach Open. Some of our major events were the Cuervo Gold Crown Series. So we had 4 major events: U.S. Open, 3 Cuervos, and then of course the Manhattan Open. So there were things which would define your career. There was also the FIVB World Championships in Brazil, in Rio. So I won that one with Adam Johnson in 93. So I had sort of gotten, I checked all the check boxes of everything. Number 1 player in the world, won the major tournaments, won the premier tournaments, and all of a sudden this one popped up. And I mean, it wasn't what I expected to put a feather in my cap when I first started playing volleyball, but by the end, it's now clearly the premier event to win in the sport of beach volleyball.
Yeah, there you go. Listen, I didn't even know you played with Adam Johnson.
Yeah, we played it. Not only did we play together, we played in Australia to start out with. We did a tour there. We played in Brazil in the World Championships in '93 and won that. And I played a few tournaments with him at the beginning of the tour, beginning of the season in maybe 91 and 92. Yeah.
Wow, that's cool. Very cool. Learn something new every day. Anyway, after such a high-profile athletic career, how did you get into finance and investing?
So after I retired from beach volleyball in 1999, I went to business school at Stanford University. And I've always had a passion and interest in finance. As a matter of fact, as I said, when I first started playing, my first year as a professional beach volleyball player, well, it wasn't really a professional. I made $10,000 in 1988. And I was going to school at that time. I was going to UCLA getting my undergraduate degree in economics. And I was going to go into finance. I was going to go into probably financial planning. I got my certified financial planning degree. So I wasn't actually thinking, my brain wasn't thinking in terms of being a professional athlete. About 92, 93, when the whole thing sort of kicked into gear and there was millions and millions in prize money and millions of dollars in sponsorships, then it was like, okay, this is my full-time job. But prior to that, I'd always had a plan to have a career and a job. And even though we did really well in the sport of beach volleyball, it is not a premier professional sport. Okay, so it's not football, baseball, basketball, hockey. It's not soccer. It's not tennis. It's not golf. Okay, it's one of these sort of like, non-premium professional sports. So no matter, I was the number 1 player in the world. I won the most prize money, me and maybe a couple other people. I knew I had to get a job afterwards if I wanted to, I had to get a job. That's the bottom line. Like, I'm not, we're not making $30 million a year like Scotty Scheffler or, Patrick Mahomes. Right. So that's just the reality of Olympic sports. That's the reality of some of these sports that aren't as big and will never be as big. They're niche sports, and that's fine. I enjoyed playing it. I'm happy with the career we had in the sport, its size. There's reasons why it's as big as it is, and it's not going to be bigger no matter what people think. But yeah, so after that, I got into finance. I worked in investment banking in New York and in private equity, mostly on the operations side. And now I run a hedge fund. I consult with high net worth individuals and institutions on financial areas and things like that.
Very cool. So how did the volleyball mindset translate into working in business? What did you take from it?
Well, so the thing that translates the most from sports to business is radical accountability, basically, okay? It's looking at yourself and what you're doing and determining whether or not you're doing it correctly, right? So first of all, sports is goal-oriented, and the question is in business, you have to be goal-oriented at all. Not every corporation that I've worked with or consulted with, when you go and ask them, like, all right, what are your goals? And does everybody in your organization agree with those goals? And the answer is usually no, as it is on a sports team. A sports team, you're trying to win. So the radical accountability comes in the fact that like you want the feedback instantly of whether you're not doing it correctly. So you know what your goal is, you know what it takes to get there, and you are constantly getting feedback and being held accountable for your actions to get to those goals. And you don't always do it. You sometimes fail, you sometimes mess up. That's fine. You pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and go. And so you see that. So that's what really helped in business. So I actually, to be honest with you, I kind of sometimes go over the net in a sense. Like you're not allowed to yell at employees like our coaches yelled at us. You stink. You suck. I get that. So sometimes as an athlete coming into business, you can get a little bit too much. I sometimes have to pull myself back, and it's a little bit longer time frame. It's here's a certain situation in sports. Do you know why you're not winning or not? So if you know why you're not winning, why aren't you doing something about it? And if you don't know why you're not winning, why don't you find out? And it's sort of same in business. Is the company, the business, what you're doing successful, or is it not? Okay. And if you don't know, why don't you know? Sort of stuff like that.
Well, that's a great insight, but it leads me to what I wanted to talk to you about, your creative side. You're a creator. You spend a lot of time writing and reflecting on sports. We connect a lot on social media where you're giving your 2 cents about, building team building and that kind of thing. What pushed you to start sharing your ideas publicly?
Well, it was funny because it sort of happened during the lockdowns. Okay. And what is it? 2001. I had always been involved in, as a hobby outside of what I do for a living. I've thought about winning and the winning mindset in the business of sports. So I've read a lot of books on famous athletes, famous coaches, the history of certain sports, and the business of sports. So it's always been a hobby of mine in a sense. My dream would be to get the beach volleyball tour of the United States back to what it was in the 90s. That would be epic. I never really formally wrote things out or podcasted or spoke about it. And then in 2021, I think it was during they had kind of opened up, and I was invited to a brand new hotel in Malibu, like a hotel resort. And they said, hey, for this great weekend we just gave you for free, including food and drink and entertainment in the room. It was a beautiful brand new resort in Malibu. They said, would you mind doing a social media post? And I said, yeah, sure. I'll do a social media post. But instead of just doing a click of like, here I am at the Malibu resort, and I just decided to write something on the winning mindset. So I said, hey, if you want, this is what the winning mindset is. And I got such a great reaction from it that I kept writing. And what happened here in Los Angeles was we had a very, very, very strong lockdown. And everything was closed. So I work from home predominantly, and you found yourself a lot of times at home and with not a lot to do, because I'm an active guy. I go outside. I like to hike. I like to go to the gym. I like to go on the bike path. I like to go out. At the end of the day, if you want to go to a restaurant, go to a bar, everything was out. So I found myself on the weekends with little to do. So I just started writing. I'd wake up on Saturday and Sunday, start writing, and then I started podcasting. And what I found out, as I said, there isn't much out there on the art and science of winning. All right. Winning an athletic contest at the professional or elite Olympic level. All right. Everybody's like, hey, sports, it should be about fun. It's about good. It's like they want to talk around the issue of actually winning an athletic contest at the highest level. And I understand that. Like I talk about training youth who want to become professional athletes, right? So if you want you're a child who wants to become a professional or elite Olympic athlete, or you're parent of one of those children, there's a path you take that is not what other youth athletes are going to do. And what I always say is youth sports should be about fun, should be about getting to know friends, meeting people, socializing, and learning the game and getting exercise, right? That's what they're for. And so what I found is I thought I'd be writing for a very, very narrow audience. It's a very, very narrow subject. It's winning elite professional competitions in the championship moment at what it takes, and the people that do that. And what I found is there's a difference, as I say this, there's a difference between those that win these high-end athletic contest championship moments. They are different than those that do not win. And the difference is knowable, it's discoverable, and it's learnable. So that led me into a discussion of what is the winning mindset, or getting into flow states is what they call it. And again, it's research that I found, or I didn't find much. I just said, hey, give me the best. Like if you were to go to Chat GPT or whatever, or Copilot, and say like, what is the research on winning? There wasn't any, because nobody wants to. It's like one of those icky things people don't want to talk. You're not supposed to talk about it. You're supposed to say, right? God, all glory to God, or this or that, or just, this and that. You always, everyone talks around it, which is fine. So I thought I'd just be talking like, who wants to know about, professional and elite Olympic winning at the highest level? Like, it's not, I'm not out here saying, you live your best life, try hard. Those are all good, right? The rah-rah speeches. And then I got into, lastly, you talked about it. I started looking at it, I go, well, why are some sports more successful than others? Like, why football in the United States and not cricket? Whereas in India, it's cricket and not football, even though we're both, former British colonies, right? Like, so it's hockey in Canada. Like, so I said, well, yeah. So I said, like, well, all right, why is tennis and golf more popular than beach volleyball? And same thing, when you start researching and investigating, you find out why. There's certain reasons why, and that is what I write about, and that is what I podcasted about.
So, what's volleyball gotten wrong?
It's not necessarily what it's gotten wrong. Is that there's three things that determine what is going the popularity of the sport: complexity, narrative, and communication. Right. So some sports just aren't as interesting to watch as an athletic contest as other ones. All right. That's the first thing you get to. So it's not a knock on any athletes. It's not a knock on any sport, but some of them are more interesting to watch than others. Well, what's more interesting to watch? What it is, complexity. So the complexity of the sport has a lot to do with it. And I compare football, which is highly complex, soccer are highly complex sports, hockey's highly complex, basketball highly complex, with, say, the javelin throw. Right? The javelin throw is not a very complex sport. A person comes up and throws a stick. Right. So you can see why that one is. Now, where does volleyball line up? And then there comes something called narrative. All right. That's the stories you can tell out of a sport.
And storytelling has a huge impact on the audience, so to speak, correct?
Absolutely. Because the narrative is not only the number of stories. There's a lot of stories you can tell in a football league or in a soccer league, there's also a lot of stories you can tell about, like the Super Bowl and Wimbledon and Masters golf, for example, right? The Indy 500, the Daytona 500. So the stories that come out of sports, the more stories and more opportunities for stories you have, the more popular it's going to be. And then the communication is the next thing, is how easy is it to communicate what it is you're doing, right? And that's one of the things that, if there's anything that volleyball does wrong, they do that wrong, right? It's really easy to say Olympics. I was speaking to a group of kids in one of the less fortunate areas of Los Angeles, a bunch of seventh graders, and he says, "Hey, this is Kent Steffes, Olympic gold medalist." Like, everyone knows what the Olympics are, what Olympic gold medals. And I pulled out the Olympic gold medal, and everyone goes, "Ooh!" It's the same reaction you get. Very easy to communicate that. Very easy to communicate playoffs, championships. Very easy to communicate what the Masters is and stuff like that. So you find that currently, let's take volleyball as an example. The F5VB has been bouncing around between all these ideas. They have this tour, they have that tour, they have the Elite 16, which was an Elite 16, and nobody really shows up. And do the contests matter? That's an important thing too. What we find is that championships are more popular to be watched than playoffs, which are more popular than just regular season games, which are more popular than just exhibitions, right? So one of the things which characterizes a more popular premium professional sport is you'd like to see the qualification process, if you were, for their championship. So football has an 8-week qualification process to the playoffs, to their championship, and those are all compelling to watch. And I did a calculation on the FIVB Elite 16, and I found out that more than half of the tournaments didn't even have half of the top 16 players in them. So what are you really watching? What is it really at stake? Is this something that the athletes want to win? And in the U.S., it's just a mess. They just are doing this city versus city league model, which is just it's being run by people who clearly don't understand what the business of sport is on an intuitive level, and that's what they're running into. Like, all right, so they have Dallas versus Palm Beach, and first of all, it's not really a team. It's not a city. It's not that they're from Dallas. It's not Dallas.
They're not from the cities.
First of all, they're not. Let me give you an example. They're not independent teams, right? One guy owns all the teams, so they're not actually competing against each other. So people say here's a kind of a misnomer too. Is people say like football is really, really popular in the United States, and that's not technically true. This is why I'm getting that writing. The NFL is popular. Okay, Power 4 college football is popular. If football was popular, the UFL would be popular. XFL would have been popular. USFL would have been popular. Division 2 and 3 college football would be popular, and they're not. And that's where you get into distinctions like that. One of the things that volleyball does, or at least in the United States, is these teams aren't independent, all right? The cities aren't actually independently fighting each other. That's a pretty big deal. So one guy owns them all, and he just says, you're on this team this year, and you're on that team. It's not going to work, is the point, no matter how hard you want to try, because the sports fan is not fooled by fake sports and fake competitions, okay? They want real event. They want real competitions that matter and that have meaning, and the athletes know it as well.
Okay, so one of the things that I thought about with the lack of success is the individual branding. Like, I mean, every famous volleyball player I know is 60 years old. I mean, I know St. John, I know Karch Karai, I know Kent Steffes, I think Bob Stewart, like, I guess he's my age, right? I mean, everyone has, we can think back to the heyday, but I never thought they took advantage of the branding opportunities like we did way back in the 80s and 90s. What happened?
So what happened is, all right, so your first question is, again, when you look at what sports are popular, what sports are commercially successful, they have a certain structure. All the successful sports have a certain structure. All the successful leagues, all the successful events have a certain structure that all these new pop-up sports do not, okay? And at the end of the day, what everyone wants to do is to make the money for themselves, all right? Just put that there for a second. The sport of beach volleyball is not the proper structure to be successful. It was. And you ask the question, okay, in a beach volleyball tour, in a sport of beach volleyball, who should benefit from it? Who should be making the money? And there's only 3 entities that should be rightfully making the money. And I won't get into it, but what's happened now with the influx of private equity money and the business of sport exploding, and you're seeing it in all the leagues, is there's this other entity, this private equity owner, who wants to take that sub value of this thing, and they're not in a proper role. They're not a proper place. It's not correct. And that's what's fundamentally coming down. Most of the women's sports, like I talk about, like the professional or the Premier Volleyball Federation, I predicted it was going to fail, and it did. It merged into the MLV, and that isn't going to work either. Single entity ownership models don't work. I don't know enough about Love B, but I predicted the USFL failing, the XFL failing, the UFL is going to fail, even though they have micropoly. The PFF, the Professional Fighters League, is going to fail.
All about MLS? MLS is a single one.
Well, here we go, right? So this is the point. No single entity ownership model has ever worked. MLS has been struggling with their single entity ownership model, but it is a hybrid model, okay? It's a hybrid model, and they have what's called the Soccer United Marketing. So they have a separate entity, Soccer United Marketing, which is external to the league, which is where they're getting most of their money. So the MLS failed miserably. And lately they've pivoted to the model where they're trying to get the franchises into the hands of billionaires in the sports-specific stadiums, right? Purpose-built stadiums, right? So that's how they're going to hopefully make it work. And that's probably going to work. We will see. It will be one of the first ones of these models that work. And as you can see, so what everybody says is, well, if you take a look at like NBA, so the NBA, Genie Bus of the Lakers just sold the Lakers for $10 billion. And everyone goes, dang, if multiply that by 32, that's a lot of money. So I'm going to start a league in which the individual owners don't own the team. I'm going to own all that equity. Right. So that eventually when it gets present, I will be able to transfer for that to myself. That's what's fundamentally having problems with the league, because when you have a single entity ownership model, you're not sure, the people don't believe the competition is real. And there's a book here in my bookcase called Sports Illusion, Sports Reality. And in 1980, he said the same thing. He called it syndicated leagues in the past. And it's the dream of every private equity owner. So imagine you owned the NBA and you got all the national television rights and you got all the merchandising rights and you got all the top level rights, and this poor little franchisee is more like a McDonald's owner, like, working his butt off to make a few bucks while the big cheese up top makes all the money. All right. It doesn't work in sports is the problem.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I guess everyone wants to be Dana White. They want to own
Yeah.
that entity where they can control everything, or Don King back in the old days or something. Anyway, so
Yeah, well, that's funny because the place where single entity ownership models do work is the fight game, combat sports. So fighting and UFC, they have to, and a little bit in motorsports. Like NASCAR is single entity ownership.
Right.
F1 is part. They have the FIA with the marketing arm, but yeah.
Yeah. So how important do you feel it is for sports leagues and people involved in it to think like media companies? Is that how we're going to have to do it?
Well, first of all, if you are, all right, so a sport like beach volleyball is a media company, all right? They're an advertising and marketing company, basically, because the business of sport is to sell something. You collect an audience and you sell something. Now, a lot of people don't understand what the business the NFL is in, all right? If you understand it from a sports and a business position, you would say, what business is the NFL in predominantly? And predominantly, they're in the carrying fees of cable companies, because the only reason you're paying your outrageously expensive cable bills because they have live sports on them. All right. Without that, those leagues would be in trouble. So if you are, remember, I said what distinguishes a popular sport from a non-popular sport or commercially successful sport from one, and that is, do you have the cable companies over a barrel? All right. Do you have leverage on the cable companies? Because if you do not show the Philadelphia Eagles in Philly, nobody is going to sign up for your cable, the cable company. Right. So all the major leagues are basically just pass-through entities so ESPN charges everybody $10 per subscriber, no matter if you watch the football or not. So it doesn't matter if you watch ESPN at all, you're still paying $10 a month. That's how it works. And then they shuffle that money off to the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, all the leagues. Right? So that's how it works. So in a sense, what is it that beach volleyball is going to sell? That's what we're talking about, or any sport, or like what is the women's volleyball league, professional, or what is it now? MLB. What are they selling? So you're probably not going to be able to make it just by selling tickets and even merch. The only way into it is from the media, all right, on the social side. You have to be selling the products of sponsors and companies that you're interacting with, right? So in a sense, you're a marketing and sales organization. And now what's happened is, I talk about this is really, really in the weeds, people. But if you're interested in this, if you're interested in not the headlines, what everyone talks about, is that the CPMs on marketing and advertising in sports have collapsed because of the internet. So advertisers and marketers no longer have to use the sport to get to your audience, because they already know who your audience is. So they know everybody at a beach volleyball tournament, they know who's there, and they can advertise directly to them, not through your sport. So what that has happened is that the entities that are becoming more successful are the ones who are no longer sponsoring necessarily or advertising other brands. They're actually selling their brands themselves. All right. That's where you're going to see in the future. So one of the reasons why beach volleyball is not successful is because they're not selling anything. So they have to sell clothing. They have to sell sunscreen. They have to sell directly. This is not just get a sponsor. They have to sell sunglasses. They have to sell alcohol. They have to sell energy drinks. Okay. So the first thing I would do is, if I was involved with beach volleyball or something like that, I would say we have to start these companies because we have to sell them something, because you need the margin. You need the margin from those sales to underwrite the losses, which is what sports are. And that first thing everybody says to me is like, well, let's just not do the volleyball part. Let's do the product part. And you're like, well, it's because I like beach volleyball and I'd like to see it successful. The plan is for a successful beach volleyball tour. Yeah.
For me, I always thought, when we go back to the storytelling as part of the marketing, I always thought indoor volleyball had better stories to tell. There are more people, there's more stuff going on. It's more intricate as a sport. And, with 6 guys on and guys who want their spots and all that, I always thought there was just so much more interest you could drum up. But trust me, nobody wants to watch indoor volleyball leagues. What is it that they've done that's the beach, even with the job the beach has done, has surpassed what indoor volleyball is, compared to, like, say, what it is in Europe, where there's leagues.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's difficult to compare the United States to Europe because they have a wholly different economic model, right? So most of their Olympic sports are supported by the government with government funds. We don't have that in the United States, okay? So it's difficult to say that. So yeah, they have a lot of times through their health, they have free health care, and they use some of that money to,
Everyone has free health care.
That's true. Yeah.
Everyone except you guys have free health care.
Well, that we don't have free healthcare, so the healthcare, like when we were in the Netherlands for the World Championships of beach volleyball, it was the Dutch health system which sponsored the tournament because people play volleyball, healthy lifestyle. So put that aside as a special case. The real answer is that beach volleyball's got that narrative I told you about, which is the lifestyle, right? It's the beach, it's the beach play Babico. It's like you're watching people have fun. You're watching a fun sport. So that's something that indoor lacks. But what indoor lacks is that another thing about the successful sports, if you look at the history of baseball, basketball, hockey, football, the original teams and the owners of the teams did not make money on the sports. Okay, they did them because they loved them. Like it's called. There's 4 ways you make money on a team-based sport like that, and only one of them is actual positive revenue on the actual sport. Whereas you have to have some other interest going on, something else which makes sense. Why are you doing this team? Okay, so it's a so like the famous Montreal Canadiens were owned by the Molson family, who owned the stadium, who was also selling beer. Okay, you see that? So perhaps the Canadiens as a team didn't make money, but Molson got a lot of benefit out of that. Remember what I told you? You collect an audience, you sell them something. That's the business of sport. So in terms of like Jim Norris owned the Detroit Red Wings, and he had controlling interest in the Chicago Blackhawks and the Rangers, and he was involved in this massive commodities. He was a commodities trader. He had grain and grain silos and shipping and all that. And it was kind of one of these like, I'm a rich guy and I kind of break even and maybe I throw some money in. If I want a good hockey player, I'm going to buy him. Kind of one of those things. So this is the problem with the women's indoor professional leagues is they don't have an owner who has an interest in keeping it going. That is like, what's going to happen is they're just going to get sick of these losses, these massive losses they're having, and they're just going to quit. Is the bottom line.
Right.
So
well,
that's kind of because again, it could probably take a decade. It might take 20 or 30 years.
A decade of losses
of you. It's not losses. You're losing here, but you're okay. Like you have a real estate business. All right. So the guy who owned who got the Dallas Cowboys franchise, Murchison Jr., Clint Murchison Jr., was an oil and gas guy. He was a billionaire, okay? And he was losing a couple $1 million on the Dallas Cowboys. He's like, but he also would bring all his international and his business context to football games, sit in the owner's box, and he would do deals. So he could do. He probably paid for the losses of the Cowboys from the hospitality suite he had, bringing in people. He could cut deals that way. All right, so that's why it happened. So it's going to take decades for a professional volleyball league to root itself enough into a city in which then people are like, hey, if you don't put them on my cable subscription, I'm not buying cable. You see how it kind of goes? And everybody wants to, because it's all hot money. It's all private equity money.
Right.
Okay. So they want 7 years. 7 years and out is a typical private equity thing. So if they don't get their money in 7 years, they're looking at a 7-year plan and they're like, 30-year plan. I'm going to be dead in 30 years, or at least I want the money now. That's your problem, basically. So they're trying all these models to supercharge these sports, and they're not. And my prediction is they're not going to work. Simple.
So what do you need to bring back beach volleyball to its heyday?
It's really just $2 million a year. It's like you just need probably $2 million a year for 10 years. So you just start to work on it. Again, it's the problem is that it's not. There's 3 entities that should benefit. I'm not one of them anymore. So, like, it's a charitable activity for me, which I'm willing to do, but I'm not going to screw around with anybody. Those 3 entities are. Basically, it's the guy who brings in the money, okay? So, right, you collect an audience. That's what the athletes do, and then you sell them something. There's a person who sells the sponsorships, so the executive director. Back in our day, it was Leonard Armano. He did the Miller Lite deal. He did the Cuervo deal. They do the television deals. There's the athletes, of course, okay? They benefit from a sport. And then there's the local promoter, right? The one who drives audience on the local level. Those are the 3 entities. All right. So it's not that difficult to put those 3 entities together. But the problem is when they have that 4th entity, either a private equity investor or investor, that's when you have the problem. Okay. So it isn't that it's difficult to do. It's that nobody wants to do it. All right. So you have to have the reserve clause. You have all sorts of things that make up what a real sport is, and they're just not doing them.
It's it's been a long time, and I've often puzzled over it. I speak to my guys up here, and they feel, oh yeah, all we need is one sponsor. They all feel they're one sponsorship away from launching a tour and getting all this stuff done. But at the end of the day, even as an old volleyball guy, I'm not breaking the door down to go watch a beach tournament. If it's right there, I'll watch for half an hour or something like that. But without the story and without the narrative for me, I'm not invested. Like you said, even these one owner sport franchises don't interest me that much either,
Yeah.
So,
Well, you're never going to get all right. So yeah, you're always one sponsor away, but what is the business of sport? To sell something. So great. How are you going to sell? It's really simple. If you want $1 million from Nike, you have to convince them that you're going to sell $10 million worth of Nike apparel and shoes. So, hey guys, of course, if you can sell $10 million worth of Nike, whatever, maybe it's 20 million. I don't know what their margins are, about 10%, let's say. So that's kind of where those numbers come from. You have to figure out a way to sell $10 million worth of Nike apparel. If you want $10 million in prize money, you have to figure out a way to sell $100 million worth of product across it all. And that's the key. Okay. So that's why you have to generate audience, and there's ways to generate audience. And the bottom line is that it's not worth it. Somewhere along the line, sports went from something you do as a hobby and you donate your time to, I'm not getting involved unless I get paid. And so everyone wants to fight over the money. So half the conversations I'm like, well, no, you are not going to make money. Only these three entities are. Well, why would I do that? I said, then don't. All right. You don't want to help beach volleyball. You're not going to make money. Nobody's going to make money organizing a Canadian beach volleyball tour. But if you want to see Canadian beach volleyball have a tour, maybe you want to do it. So see the problem? That's the problem. So an investor will call me and they'll go, well, how do I make money on a beach volleyball tour? I said, this is how you do it. He goes, well, that's not the business I want to be in. I go, what do you want to be in? He goes, I want to be I go down to the beach volleyball tournament, drink cocktails and look at girls in bikinis. I go, I got it. Yeah. Everyone wants to be, Jerry Jones up at, or actually, who's the guy in Vegas with the strippers in the owner's box, drinking cocktails in the box. Yep. Flying the private jets. That's what they think the business of sport is. And the business of sport is to sell stuff. It's to actually go out and sell things. All right. We did it derivatively through our sponsors in the time, because, all right, our for others out there following, our CPMs back in the 90s were about 70 per thousand. And those numbers are now 50 cents per thousand. And it's not even just per thousand. You have to have a verified, true audience, right? So, in the United States, if you have a television audience less than 350,000 people, they're not sure whether anybody's watching or just that many TVs forgot to change the channel.
Yeah, just
okay. Or you're asleep in front of the TV, or they count people in bars now who may or may not be watching the television.
Sure.
You have a true audience, you need about 1 million. You need 2 million. If you have over 2 million, you for sure have an audience. Okay, we had that back in the 90s. So again, everybody, what's funny? Beach volleyball, everyone wants to start arguing about the rules or doing this and doing that. I'm like, how are you going to get 2 million people to watch television? How are you going to get people to come down to the beach? How are you going to get the permits? Those are the conversations that nobody wants, because that's not fun. That's not fun, So
then tell me, what's the next niche sport that's going to take off? Last question.
God, it's a good question. Pickleball is probably going to have to readjust to a more normal level. That'll be interesting to see. They're just two guys fighting over it mostly. What'll be the next sport? It's hard to say because these kind of come up. When was the last time? Pickleball is the last sport which has gotten popular, I think, right? I mean, when I was there, they exploded with snowboarding, all sorts of other lifestyle sports, like skateboarding made a comeback. Women's sports, which professionally didn't really even exist prior to 1990s, they've certainly come on strong. I don't know. I don't think this flag football thing's going to work.
What? I always thought that was it's fun to watch that because as an exhibition thing or kind of a sideshow, but I'm not watching a flag football league. I'm good. Right?
Yeah, maybe we'll watch it in the Olympics, like the gold medal match might be interesting. But
you know what?
Yeah.
Maybe. Listen, for us, the one we always expect, and what has actually taken off is curling. Curling's gone from total niche to it's big money now for you can make money being a professional curler. So
it's a fun game. It's really interesting. Yeah, it's one of my favorite. I've never curled, but it's one of my favorite Winter Olympic sports.
You should give it a shot.
I heard it's really hard. It's really hard.
It's pretty hard, and also there's lots of beers involved, so that doesn't make it any easier. Anyhow, listen, Kent, thank you so much for your time. Always a pleasure talking to you. We'll continue the conversation down a different path at another time.